Hey guys, welcome again to another Sacred Writings video. My name is Jason Damiani, and today I'll be going over a very old papyrus fragment in my collection. Normally my videos are about Bibles or liturgical manuscripts, but this video is a little bit different in that I don't know that what I have here is from a Bible. This papyrus fragment dates back to the 4th through 7th centuries AD, so it's very old. A decent gap there because it's just an estimate based off of the type of script that's on there. But at its oldest, it would make this manuscript, or this papyrus fragment, about 1,700 years old, which is significantly older than a lot of the other manuscripts that I've shown in my collection. And so this is a really nice piece, very unique piece. It is not the oldest piece in my collection, so of course subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out when I do those videos. But this manuscript fragment is very interesting to say the least. Now, because I don't know exactly what is written on here, I don't know the contents of it. The person who sold it to me also did not know the contents. The text that is on there is very, very minimal, so it's very difficult to make out what is there. But it is likely not from a Bible. I'm not going to say it's impossible. It definitely is possible that it could have been from some kind of biblical manuscript or commentary or something along those lines, but highly unlikely. Still fun to consider though. Now, I'm no papyrologist, so I cannot provide specific details about this particular fragment or its content. Therefore, I don't have any information about who specifically had written it. A lot of these papyrus that we have from antiquity, very, very difficult to determine the exact writer. So similarly with this fragment, I can't say with any certainty at all. And what I do know about this fragment is that it was written in Coptic. You can look at the script there. It is very difficult to make out. But Coptic was the language of Egypt from roughly the 3rd through 11th centuries AD. Spoken Coptic was very similar to how the ancient Egyptians spoke. The main difference was that Greek words were added to it. This is why it is often difficult to distinguish between Greek and Coptic papyrus fragments. However, it wasn't until the Christian era that Egyptians switched from the simplified form of hieroglyphs to the written form of Coptic that was used in the early centuries after Christ. So the early church and the Christians around that time worked really, really hard to preserve God's word, preserve the stories of the gospel and the letters of Paul and all the things surrounding that. And so the Christians did a whole lot for the world of books even. All throughout history, we'll see the Christians are the ones who are really pushing for the preservation of God's word. And so they were very instrumental in that. We have more papyrus fragments from antiquity of the Bible than any other document in the world. A lot of theologians refer to it as an embarrassment of riches because we just have so much. So it's really amazing to see how the Lord worked through these people in history. Nevertheless, what remains of Coptic biblical manuscripts is only fragmentary. In fact, there are no complete Bibles, New Testament included, written in Coptic that have survived. But it's clear from the multitude of Christian Coptic papyri that the early church in Egypt was supported with a well-educated community of Christians. So as I touched on earlier, these Christians were very educated, they worked very hard to preserve God's word, and they did a great job in doing that. Now, as far as this specific item, again, I don't know if it was from a Bible or not. I would love for it to be, but of course, I don't know. But since this is Coptic, the location of where it was produced, where it was written, it's a little bit easier to narrow down. All papyrus came from Egypt, and the Coptic language was primarily written and spoken in Egypt. So deduction would conclude that this was very likely produced in Egypt, and I do believe that it was. The materials used for this is, of course, papyrus. The Bible was written, at least the New Testament, believed to be written on papyrus. I do believe that as well. But thousands of years ago, papyrus plants, which were a type of reed that grew along the marshes of the Nile Delta, was used to make paper. This very tall plant was used to be made into very inexpensive yet durable writing material. There were 4 basic steps for turning a reed into paper. Step 1, the stem of the reed was divided into sections around 12 to 18 inches long. The outside of the reed that was green was taken off, exposing the soft white inner pith. This would be put into strips. The second step was where the strips were moistened with water until it softened to produce a natural gummy substance. The strips were then laid out on a hard surface vertically, and then another layer laid on top horizontally, and then covered with a cloth to absorb the water. The gummy substance worked as a binding agent. In the third step, in order to reinforce the layers, the papyrus was pounded with a wooden mallet for over an hour until the fibers broke down and matted together. This was placed under a heavy weight and set out in the sun to dry. And the fourth and final step was the dry sheet was trimmed and smoothed with pumice and burnished with a shell, stone, or a piece of ivory. The smoother side was more desirable for writing, but many manuscripts had text on both sides. So I do actually have multiple papyrus fragments in my collection, and most of those papyrus fragments that I have do have content on the front and the back. However, this particular fragment only has text on this particular side here. On the back side, it is blank, so very likely that it was the scenario in which this was the more desirable side, the side that would have been used more, and so it was written just on there, which could indicate also that it may have been like an invitation or something along those lines for its content, that it was just written on one side. There was no need to write on the verso side. Now, as far as where I purchased this particular papyrus fragment, I got this one off of eBay, and I paid only $185 for it. A lot of papyrus fragments can be very expensive. The more you know about them, the more expensive they are, the more detail you have about its specific origin, what the content is, if you have more of the specific dating to it. All those characteristics are definitely going to add to its value. But when you're going to have something like this, where you're going to give a broad time frame of when it may have been produced, only that it was written in Coptic, it definitely makes it a little bit more affordable. But it's still a very nice item, one that I've really enjoyed having in my collection. I love looking at these manuscripts and thinking about the people thousands of years ago who wrote them. Just an amazing piece of history, something I absolutely love, and I hope you guys enjoyed as well. Stick around for the close-up shot so you can see this fragment in a lot more detail, a lot closer up. And of course, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video so you can help support that, and I will see you guys in the next video.